always, every day. How are you? Nice to see you. Don't move out of the garden.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. My name's Dean Rees, I'm the Mayor of Wangaratta here, so I just say thank you for coming out. It's great to see a great crowd. We hate to say it, we've got more people here than what we do at a Wangaratta meeting. I think the last meeting in Wangaratta was a special meeting, but we only had 2 people, so to see such a big crowd, it's a credit to the country people on how you support us, so thank you very much for coming, appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, the rural city of Wangaratta, we live stream our council meetings here, so I just need to read out that under clause 91.4 of the Governance and Meeting Conduct, local law provides the following. This public meeting is being recorded to improve access to the meeting for our community. The recording will be retained by council in accordance with council's legal obligations, and as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd also like to acknowledge the Bangarang people as our traditional landowners on the land in which we're meeting here tonight, and we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and to any other traditional landowners who may be with us tonight. Would you please stand for the opening prayer? Almighty God, we humbly ask Thee to bless and guide this council in its deliberations so that we may truly preserve the welfare of the people on whom we serve. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to go around the room and do a quick introduction on who our councillors are and who our corporate team is here tonight and their roles, and councillors with your portfolios, please. And I'll start with Jamie Chubb over here.
Thank you. My name is Jamie Chubb and I'm the Director of Community Wellbeing at Council.
Good evening, Sarah Ridley, and I'm the Director of Corporate Services.
Councillor Harvey Benton, North Ward, and portfolios are infrastructure, agriculture and emergency.
Councillor Ashley Fitzpatrick, and my portfolio is community wellbeing, youth and families, and I'm in the City Ward.
Brendan McGrath, CEO.
Dean Rees, as the Mayor, my portfolio is planning.
Mark Curry, Deputy Mayor, Warby Ward, and portfolio of EcoDev.
Ken Clark, my portfolio is sport and recreation. Harry Bussell. My portfolio is tourism, and I'm your representative right here in Myrrhee.
Stephen Swan, Director Development Services.
And Alan Clark, I'm the Director of Infrastructure Services.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Just a quick apology from Councillor Dave Fuller, who couldn't be with us. He's had a family funeral in, I think, Bega, so an apology from Councillor tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll just point out that the order of procedure will be that we will conduct certain points on our agenda here tonight, and I will ask for community feedback if anybody has any questions about the item in general. And upon that item, everybody gets 2 questions per item if they want. Then it will come to council for a vote to go from there to either get up and be approved, or we need a mover and a seconder, and then we go around council to see if councillors would like to talk on certain issues. At the end of the meeting, there will be public question time, and 2 questions per person from the public on any issue that you may have that you would like to ask council. We already have a written question that has come in, and I thank you for the written question, but please feel free to come up to the microphone, state your name, and ask your question at the end, and I will make sure that I make you aware that that is the time to do so. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll quickly go over to the confirmation of our previous minutes. I have a mover that, Councillor Clark, and seconder, Councillor Curry, and all those in favour. That motion is carried. Ladies and gentlemen, there are no conflicts of interest and no receptions or petitions or hearings or deputations. So I'll move on to presentation of reports and council reports. Councillor Harry Bussell would like to have a couple of reports noted. Please, Harry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just 1 second. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. With this is a report. We give out tourism grants every year, and this grant was for the Transmoto 8-hour motorbike race at Bobbanawara on the 21st and 22nd of September. And it was a $5,000 grant. The event sold out overnight online. There was 470 riders, and there was 150 riders on a waiting list. So that's a lot of interest there. There was 238 entrants in the Wangaratta 8-hour event. Will be their only race for the year. 287 entrants was the first time they'd ridden in the Wangaratta region. 91% of the riders intend to come back for the 2020 race. Participants spent $180,000 in the region, and 470 riders, and in total 800 total attended the event. Online content pre and post event reached 690,000 people. 83% spent more than 2 days here, and 93% travelled more than 150 kilometres. 36% of the people came from interstate, and the Transmoto raised $3,000 on Saturday afternoon for the prevention of suicide in Wangaratta. And a personal thank you to you, Mr. Mayor, for your work as the auctioneer for auctioning off pole position to this event. So well done, raised $3,000 there. The Transmoto wants to thank our council for our hands-on support for their event. They were impressed by that. And so I'm very proud to be part of a team that can do things here in Wangaratta, and we can change people's lives for the better. The next report I've got is quite an interesting one, and the King Valley Arts put on a performance which was called 3 Birds, 1 Cock at the special Myrrhee Hall. It's a great place, the Myrrhee Hall. And a couple of months later, the Hall Committee received a thank you card from the performers, which was Kathy, Anna and Maddie, which says, "Dear Anita, Louise and Neil and team at the Myrrhee Hall, We just wanted to follow up and say a huge thank you for you having us bring and show to Myrrhee. The hall was a very, very special one to perform in, and we felt very, very spoilt with the delicious soup and treats afterwards from the CWA. We'd love to come back again someday. Myrrhee was definitely the highlight on our Regional Arts Victoria tour. This great old hall deserves to have some love and care and have a bit of money spent on it, I think. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll move straight on into the order of business. So we'll come into corporate services, item number 13.1, our annual report. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. So this is the annual report for 2018-19. It's a legislative requirement that all councils submit a report on their annual performance over the previous year. And that's essentially to ensure all councils are held accountable for delivering what they commit to delivering in their council plan. The financial statements, performance statements and government and management checklist that form the body of the annual report were previously adopted in principle at the special council meeting on the 23rd of September. This annual report comprises of those and some other sections which talk a bit more to the projects that have been delivered at council over the past year. And the recommendation is that council receives and adopts the annual report for 2018-19.
Thank you, Sarah. Are there any questions from the gallery in relation to item 13.1? Please, Mr. Fox, come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity. On page 69 of the report, on item under community wellbeing, the last few words are aged and disability services. I'm asking you, Mr. Mayor, that if I give you a detailed letter on the advantages of putting a pedestrian crossing from Docker Street to Docker Street, straight across the railway line at the water tower, will you and your councillors consider my letter in the hope that council will renegotiate with VicRail? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Thanks for the question. Good question. If you put the letter into us, we will forward it through to ARTC, that would be, and VicTrack, and get their opinion on it, and then have it come back to council for us to consider. Sorry, just between over Docker Street with the train line, so a walking track across the train.
I was hoping, Mr. Mayor, that when my letter or my submission goes to the Rail Corporation, that it has the imprimatur of the CEO and the Mayor of the city. If you're not going to give that, well, it's only a piece of paper.
Correct, Mr. Fox, and we will look at it as a safety measure. They've obviously taken little crossings out because they don't want people crossing the railway track.
Yeah.
But if you write your letter, we will consider it together and then advise you in the future on what we feel would be the appropriate action.
I thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on the annual report here tonight? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'll look for a mover on the annual report. Councillor Benton will move it and Councillor Curry will second it. Would anybody like to talk on the annual report? Councillor Benton, would you like to talk first, or are you okay to forego?
I'd just like to commend the report, and as it is a statutory document or a mandatory document that we've got to do, and the work that we put into it, and it does take a lot of time to put these reports together so they officially can be audited, looked at, and referred back to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Benton. Councillor Clark?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a matter of principle, I'm opposing the adoption of the annual report. This issue was raised by an independent member of the Audit Advisory Committee, and that committee requested further investigation. A prepayment in excess of $500,000 was made to the contractor on the assumption the work would be completed in the first week of July. However, this was not completed as per council advice until the first week of September. I disagree with the external auditor comments that this was not material. The point I'm really making is that an amount of interest foregone by the council on this amount of 1% for the 65 days would be almost $900. We have many of our ratepayers earning around $450 a week working in the mills. So I'm sure that they would, like myself, say this is material in nature. So I'll be asking that my vote be recorded against the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to commend the whole team that worked on this. And it is true that there was an error in a process. But it is really funny because I look back at sort of my professional career and the business that I work in. We get audited, I'd say once a month on a whole range of things, whether it be age and disability, food, accounting, every time. And not one time I can really remember that an audit hasn't uncovered something. Because let's be honest, if they don't find something, they look a little bit harder. But what I commend the team here about is they were asked a question and they went back and they had a look. And they've gone, yep, something did happen. And what we're going to do is we're going to put in a process to overcome that. Now that tells me that the organisation is learning, and it's not going to stand behind and make up lies and turn around and say that it didn't happen. It's actually going to turn around and for the better and improve. And for an organisation to be like that, I think that's just absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Any other further comments from councillors? Councillor Benton, you okay to... I'll put the motion forward. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. Noted. Councillor Clark's. Noted. Councillor Clark's against the motion. Thank you. Sarah, please. 13.2 election period policy.
Thank you. So the election period policy essentially sets out what councillors, candidates to be future councillors and officers in the organisation can and can't do during the election period in the run-up to next year's elections. And that's to ensure a fair and transparent playing field during that time. This is essentially a housekeeping to incorporate some minor changes, such as reflecting the change from the previous administration to now a council law operation, and to update the dates in the policy. So the recommendation is that council adopts the revised election period policy for 2019.
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions from the gallery? Thank you. Thank you, Ashley Fitzpatrick, to move that, and Councillor Benton to second it. Would anybody like to talk on this? Fairly straightforward. No. I'll put the motion forward. Are all those in favour? The motion is carried. Sarah, 13.3, the 18-19 annual council plan measure report, please.
Yeah, so this is the last of the three, and this report reports on council's performance in terms of delivering some of the major projects that were set out in the council plan, and our performance against some of our key service measures within our council plan. So the recommendation is that council receives the council plan, what you will see in 2018-19 annual report, and the council plan measures annual report. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions from the gallery on this one too? Thank you. I'll put the motion forward. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Fitzpatrick, and again, Councillor Benton. Would any councillor like to talk on the motion? No? Put it to the vote again. All those in favour? The vote is carried. Jamie, thank you, Jamie. 14.1 our event policy.
Thank you. So this first report is presented to Council tonight as a follow-on from our events and attraction strategy of 2018-2023. So we have been working on pulling together some policies and procedures that will support external event organisers in the delivery of events throughout our municipality. So events often come to us and require support from us across a number of different areas of council, and this is really around pulling all that together into a consolidated support resource for event organisers, and also bringing in the requirement for those events to be able to gather an event permit to make sure that we're covering off all of our risk requirements for the safe and accessible delivery of these events. So the recommendation before council tonight is that council endorses the draft events policy for public exhibition and invites public submissions regarding the policy until Friday the 15th of November. If no submissions are received under our local law, we resolve to approve the events policy 2019 revision without further resolution.
Thank you, Jamie. Any questions from the gallery on the event policy? Thank you, Mr. Fox.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. What I want to say goes beyond just the events policy. For some reason, and maybe it's historical, the council has got this 21-day submission regulation. And when I questioned this at a previous council meeting, I was told that it was government policy, that it come from the state government. But on investigation, I found that the 21 days is only the minimum. You can have 69 or 110. Why are we limiting people to 21 days? Are we late doing the policy, or are we anxious to get on with it? What is it, the 21 days? So I'm asking that question, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Jamie, would you like to answer?
Sure. So generally the minimum is 28 days, and we will sometimes put out reports or strategies or policies for additional time. Generally, what I would say is that we are in constant conversation with our community and our community groups and individuals or businesses, depending on whatever it is, the topic that we're speaking about, throughout the development of these policies or strategies, and that will always inform the draft that is presented to council. So the engagement is conducted well before council or indeed the broader community sees these policies and strategies. So whilst the 28 days is a formal process, and again, often we go beyond the 28 days, this is a process that has been informed by the community well before that 28 days. So it's viewing it in isolation is not reflective of the broad engagement that happens as part of any policy or strategy development. So,
Jamie, can I just ask you a question on that? If during that period of 28 days we felt that the inquiry level was extremely high and we needed more time, could we extend it during that process?
Absolutely, that's up to council, and has indeed happened on numerous times. You know, there has been an example, the CBD master plan was a prime example of we were pleasantly inundated with feedback from our community as part of the engagement process on the review of the draft plan, and council elected at the time to extend the process to make sure that everybody had the opportunity to be involved in the review of the document, and has happened recently under council's term as well.
Thank you. Brendan?
Just one final point I'd make, Brian, is that 28 days, as much as anything, reflects the time period before which council won't make a decision. So we're saying we won't make a decision prior to 28 days notice period. In reality, a 28-day notice period doesn't enable us to adopt a policy at tonight's meeting and bring it back to the November meeting, for example. So this one would come back to December, which essentially is 2 months. If we receive submissions any time during that 2 months, we still consider them. We don't send it back to you in a return to sender envelope saying, sorry Brian, you were 2 days late with this submission. We try and get them in earlier in that 2 months to give us more time to work through and consider and think about what's being proposed. But the reality is we still accept submissions right over that period. So really, any time we say 28 days, inevitably it's really 2 months, because the cycles are too tight to go from one meeting to another over a 1 month period. So we've got a fair bit of time period even when we say 28 days in reality.
Thank you, Brendan.
Apparently the word approximately is missing.
Oh. I'd just like to also state that councillors here, all councillors here, are very open to talk to the public at any time. If you've got concerns that we need more time on something, more inquiry, we're very happy to go and make sure that that gets arranged and gets done. So please come and talk to us, councillors. We're very open to that. Anne.
In relation to extending the periods, Jamie, historically they've done it about 3 times in 3 years that they've extended the time frame. Have you had any more response to the policies than the 28-day time frame? Because I think if someone's passionate enough about the issue, they will respond in the time frame allocated.
Yeah, generally, that's absolutely right. But if someone's engaged in the process and interested in it and invested in the outcome, they will submit comments and feedback very early in the process. I think that sometimes extending it is a reflection of making sure everyone knows that it's out there for comment, more than people needing necessarily extra time to make that submission. And I think that as a council we have acknowledged is something that we do need to continually be looking at new ways of communicating things to our community to make sure that people are aware of those plans and strategies that are out for exhibition.
Thank you, Jamie. If there's no further questions, I'll look to council for a mover. Councillor Bussell, and a seconder. Sorry, I've got Councillor Clark. Everyone's wanting a second. So then I'll take Councillor Clark. Would anybody like to comment further? Councillor Bussell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a fairly important document because there have been events in recent times where there's been some points overlooked, and this will certainly help with that. And I urge people from the public to give some more feedback. I think it's pretty good. So it's very important given the fact that events is part of my portfolio, and we certainly want well-run events, and we want them very, very orderly and prepared very well, and this document will help prepare for these big events. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bussell. I'd also like to state that council's had massive events over the last 12 months, and we've got massive events planned for next year to bring more people to our community and experience our countryside up here as well. So this policy certainly leads this way to make sure that things are done correctly. So thank you very much. If there's no further comment, Councillor Bussell, you don't want to finish off there from that. Thank you. I'll put the vote to everybody here. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. We'll now go on to Development Services and 16.1, which is a planning application. Sorry? What do you sit down? Sorry, 14.2, thank you. Sorry, Jamie. Proposed use of Waisac Reserve funding basketball.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this report is presented to Council tonight for the consideration of some expenditure from one of our reserves. So we have a reserve set up that has been set aside, funded through the profit of the Waisac facility, so the Wangaratta Indoor Sports and Aquatic Centre. So we put part of the profits that we get from that contract arrangement into a reserve to be able to fund upgrades and pieces of work that will enhance the facility to those people who use it. For any of you in the room who play basketball or who have children play basketball, you'll know that basketball is a very popular sport in Wangaratta, and our capacity to host larger scale events will be enhanced by this upgrade to the facility. So the proposal before Council tonight is to transfer just over $12,000 from our reserve to supply and install 2 basketball backboards, rings and a side swinging wall bracket.
Thank you, Jamie. Is there any questions from the gallery? Ladies and gentlemen, I'll look for a mover of this. Councillor Clark, who is our Sport and Recreation portfolio holder. Thank you for moving that. And Councillor Curry. Would anybody like to talk on the motion? Councillor Clark, okay. Anybody else? No? Ladies and gentlemen, sorry, Councillor Curry.
I'd just like to say that this particular place, the Waisac, is a great place for Wangaratta. It's just all community focused, and if we don't continually keep investing in it, it becomes the Olympic pool.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. So I'll put the recommendation motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. Now I'll go on, Stephen. I like to sort of get you up and going. That's why I was sort of trying to get you ready early. So for this one, 16.1. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is about a planning permit application that seeks approval for the subdivision of land into 2 lots to excise off an existing house at 268 Carball Warrowley Road, Warrowley. This application was presented to Council at the ordinary council meeting of the 20th of August, and officers recommended at that time that Council issue a notice of decision to refuse to grant the permit application. Council resolved to advertise the application as required under the Planning and Environment Act and to consider the application at a future council meeting, which is this council meeting. The proposal was advertised since that meeting and we did not receive any objections to the proposal. We did receive 5 supporting submissions. The proposal was also referred to referral authorities with no objections received. The proposal has been assessed against the relevant provisions of the Wangaratta Planning Scheme, and the officer's recommendation is that Council issue a notice of decision to refuse to grant the permit in respect to this application based on the following grounds. The first one is that the proposal does not support the purpose of the farming zone as it appears in the planning scheme. The second one is the proposal, when assessed against relevant state and local planning policy, is not considered to be supported. Now, from a state policy point of view, that includes policy around settlement, land use and compatibility, natural resource management, protection of agricultural land and economic development. From a local policy point of view, it includes policy around settlement, natural resource management, land use and agriculture. The third grounds for the recommendation is that the proposal is not supported by state and local strategic documents, including the Hume Regional Growth Plan, the Council Plan, and also an assessment of the versatility of agricultural land in the rural city of Wangaratta.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay. Sorry. Questions of the government, from the government? Please, sir.
Mr Mayor, for giving me the opportunity to speak. I sought your permission at the previous meeting that I attended to not ask a question but to speak on my own behalf on this matter.
Yes, sir.
Granted.
Thank you.
I'll keep this short, but I believe there's some points here I need to go through. Why do I want to excise this land?
Just excuse me, sir. Could you just say your name so that...
My name is Donald Matheson, and I live at the address of 266 Carball Warrowley Road. I wish to excise this land. It's all about succession planning for me, for my family. Passing land on to my children, giving my children the land that's been in my family for 100 years. We've been 100 years on the current farm and 173 years in total in the Warrowley Valley. So we're nearly classed as locals out there now. And this is the debate. I've had some debate with many people and councillors here and talked to a lot of people, and this is succession planning versus assets trading. I'm not in it for a quick buck, my family's not in it for a quick buck. We're not selling off the front paddock for 5 acre lots. This is so my children can take on the land, I can hand on the custody of that land, and I want to hand that custody to the next generation. Generational ownership and brings a connection to land. When my family has watched the sun come up and the sun go down for 173 years, you get a connection. You get this feeling of being on country, just to take someone else's turn. And I'm lucky enough to have a family that wants to take on the land, want to live there. It's their home, not just their physical home, it's their home. had a lot of support from neighbours. I've talked to many people over the last 4 years while I've been working on this. In the last few months, a lot of people have come to me and talk about succession planning, and it's not just a problem for Donald Matheson. This is a problem for many farmers. And I'm sure the people in this room tonight have the same problem. If it's not now, it will be in a few years, how they deal with this in the future. Our history in the valley, so you know a little bit about who I am and where I come from. My great-great-grandfather walked from Melbourne pushing a wheelbarrow to Myrrhee with his wife and his baby child. Got to Myrrhee, got to the river and said, "This will do me." And my mother's part of the family that come from Carbor, well, they drove railway spikes all the way from Melbourne to Batagini. Then they had got jack of that, so they moved ahead, set up a blacksmith business at Allen's Lane in Markman. And actually, we want this history to continue. It's important to our family, it's important to our community, that family ownership and longevity in the area prospers. I can say that my great-grandfather John Matheson appears on your mayor's board in Wangaratta. I think it was 1925 and 1926 he was the mayor of the fair city. Now the block of land that we're talking about, allotment 81, it's a soldier settlement block. And there's a meeting in Myrrhee of people. We've got a wee plaque put up to commemorate 100 years of soldier settlement in the valley. That land, my grandfather was awarded that block. Now, if you go to the hill between the back of the property, between Carbor and Myrrhee, I can look to the west and the northwest, and I can see within 8 kilometres my entire family history on the maternal side. I turn to Myrrhee, and within 4.5 kilometres is all the property that I've ever lived on or owned. So we haven't moved far in 179 years, just up the valley a bit further. And from that, this feeling of belonging comes. You feel like you belong to the land and the people. And I know it's hard for people who are generational gypsies who might live in 10 different districts, 10 different houses, 20 different places, to understand this. But a sense of belonging to a place is very strong for people who are the generational farmers or generational landholders. And it's important for the community that we have community, and the importance of that community is that bodies like the CFA, the local footy and netball clubs, pubs, local shops, local schools and businesses. We need young families coming on in the districts. Otherwise, you're just going to be an aging retirement village out there with people who shouldn't be there or shouldn't be farming still. What extended family means to children growing up. Like, I've got 3 kids, 7 grandkids, and it is our place, my wife's place and mine, is a centre. They come there, they're home, they're at Nan and Pop's place. And we look after our own, caring for our grandchildren regularly while their parents work or have other pursuits. And another thing that I'm very, very, very strong on, and I've fought strongly for, is to stop rural decline. Now, the impact on communities from rural decline, the rural city of Wangaratta has lost 1,000 rural people living in the rural landscape since the creation of the rural city of Myrrhee. Now, that's a lot of people. That's an impact on the CFA. I'm a deputy group officer with Myrrhee Group down the road here, with training's my responsibility. 4 years ago, we had 3 brigades that were in danger of folding. We lose 3 brigades in an area like this, it's going to be a lot of trouble for bushfire suppression and the like. So, and my family seem to be hanging around a long time. 1904 was the first meeting of the Bushfire Brigade formed in Myrrhee. John Matheson's name was on that, and there's been Matheson on the board, on the committee, or in leadership roles in that brigade to this day. This application, just in conclusion, this application is so land can remain in family ownership and younger generations can benefit from a farm. We see farmers grow old and ineffective because young people are kept at a distance or driven to seek work in the cities by pressures or sometimes these planning frameworks. Now, impacts on mental health of farmers. They're at risk now. Farmers are disproportionately committing suicide. And their life's hard. We have floods. At the minute I think we can do with a flood across half Australia. And droughts, know about them. Poor prices. Every now and again we have an awesome year, make a bit of coin. Then, when you get towards the end of your life, you try and give your farm away, which is what I'm trying to do now to my children. Well, I've had 4 years of, I'll describe it as hell, trying to get a productive, workable outcome for my children, an equitable outcome for my children. And I know that planning documents clearly state that succession plan is not part of the process or considered in planning applications. I believe this needs to change for the good of farmers. Yes, and you know, there's a lot of push on about farmers moving into small villages and lifestyle areas. Well, absentee farming doesn't tend to work. You have theft, you have livestock you need to manage. You also have, and it's a coming trend, farm invasions by groups that think they have a right to come on your farm and do whatever they please. And I dread the day one turns up at my place, because I don't think I'd hold it together very well. And in closing, look, I'd like to thank you for listening. Please help me achieve a fair and equitable outcome for my family, and not only for me, for all farmers, because farm succession planning needs to fit in and be flexible with planning law. And I just believe we need to improve the process so people can have a fair and equitable path to a future. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you. Are there any further questions in relation to this issue? Councillor Bustle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got an alternate motion, and I'll just read the alternate motion out. That council issue, grant a planning permit with respect to planning permit application PNAP 19/088 for a two-lot subdivision at 268 Cardwell Rowley Road, Rowley, subject to conditions listed below and in accordance with endorsed plans. So I think it's important I just read, without going through the whole alternative, but there's one section here that's important. Point 5, Section 173 Agreement. Prior to the issue of a statement of compliance, the owner of the lots must enter into an agreement with the responsible authorities made pursuant to Section 173 of the Planning and Environmental Act 1987 and make application to the Registrar of Titles to have the agreement registered on the title to the land under Section 181 of the Act, which provides that. The land described as Lot 2, this is the important bit, on endorsed plans will not be further subdivided so as to create additional lots. The owner or owners must pay all costs, including council costs, associated with the preparation, execution, registration and, if later sought, cancellation of the Section 173 agreement. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bustle. So you're moving that motion? Can I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Benton. Second that. When I'd like to talk for or against the motion.
I'll have a chat first.
Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to talk a little bit about my experience here as to what helps me come to this conclusion, because I think it's important. And some of the things you'll hear that I'll talk about are some of the things that Mr. Matheson has already mentioned. I must say that I am a fourth generation farmer, and I have lived on my property all my life. So I just want to make that. I've spent my whole life on farms around the real city of Wangaratta, a whole 60 years. Every job I've ever been linked to, farms, and I have listened to hundreds of our farmers and rural people, and I do know how rural people work. I attended most of the big meetings to do with the Rural Land Strategy 2010-2011, when over 200 people turned up to the Myrrhee Hall to listen to the council tell the people what was good for them. And that went down like a lead balloon, to put it politely. I had meetings after meetings listening to rural people, and Mr. Mayor, there was a common thread, and that was that not two family farms were the same. Family farms are very unique. They are workplaces, they are family homes, they are places where children are created, grow, and then die. The attachment to their land is huge. And that is the great thing that needs to be respected in the rural community. Isolation, and I talk about isolation because we have, as Mr. Matheson said, over 1,000 people. Now that's one of my concerns, that if we don't allow for succession planning, that slide continues. So isolation in the rural sector is a health problem. And this is why we always have to make sure that whatever we do as a council, that we have all decisions we make, we are strengthening communities. And that includes farming communities. The average age of a farmer is about 60 years of age. And I'm 60, that's a real worry. To have 3 generations working on a farm is quite common, and it's not all for money. That's the difference with farmers. Too many families wait too late to transfer ownership, and everybody needs home security. I think what this family is trying to do should be supported, because it seems to me that they are working out a family succession plan. My focus as a councillor is helping rural communities, and we have over 1,000 less, as Mr. Matheson said, so he's reading from the same hymn book as me, people in the southern ward than we had in 1997. We need people to lift our farming production, and our farms come in all sizes. Most farmers in the southern ward, agriculture is not their sole income. That's a strength. My job as a councillor is to uphold the council law, represent and support my rural people, and I'm not going to apologise for that. Now, this property at 268 Carball Rowley Road came before the Oxley Shire Council in the 1920s to approve the soldier settlement sale at £4 an acre to Ernest Matheson. And I found this by doing some research in Rowley, and this info was on a paper clipping that I photographed. So I asked for support from my council colleagues, because this will strengthen the Rowley South community and the Matheson family, and may it still be owned by Matheson in over 100 years to come. And there's nothing I could be more passionate about than rural communities. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bussell. Councillor Benton, did you want to say anything you would like to?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. When this application came into my notice, I must admit I was in very much of two minds in handling a decision in it. And when you look at the planning situation, very theoretically, you really have to refuse it. And that's the tools that planners had to work with, and I think they've done a pretty good job to try and get the planning to work in their minds. However, as it's been referred to, and I've referred back to a fair bit of the rural land strategy that Councillor Buss and I sat for about 6 or 7 months to get that previous council out of a bog hole in relationship to the 250 hectares, and we reduced the submissions from 400 submissions down to about 80. And that document was adopted in 2015, which is referred in the report. However, when you start to read some of the documents in that, it's very conflicting. And one of the things, I will go back one step, one of the things that their committee, the AAAC, the Agriculture Agribusiness Committee, that was set up for to do this rural land strategy. One of the things that we went to, finally got to, the 9 people that sat in that room for about 6 months, the only thing we couldn't get a consensus on was excisions, is this. And thank God we've got local government still involved in planning. I know that there seems to be a drive by government to take it over and make it a Spring Street rubber stamp so we can get expediation out of it. But we couldn't get consensus because of the conflicting area that we have in such an area that may be small in a lot of people's areas in the municipality of rural city of Wangaratta because of the different activities within the farming zone. And I can sympathise because this council over the last, my term since I've been involved, we've been involved in about 3 or 4, and all I'm going to call is neighbourhood disputes. Because we've had conflict of use of a farm. Farms are 24/7, and I guess the pressure's on to make sure that we can still farm. There's been court cases, and one of the things we tried to avoid, and we've tried to avoid within the rural land strategy, was the conflict of use. However, there is certain parts throughout the municipality where we should be able to be flexible, and I know I was very much for we should be able to look at and address these on their merits. However, when you still go back through some of the, in my area, I have a lot of blocks that were how they've come about, but less than 100 acres, and that, or 40 hectares, and that was one of the things that really come through all the time was the density ratio of houses of an average of 1 per 40 hectares. This motion does that. It gives the person, and the owners now have foregone, if they adopt this and accept this recommendation, the forego the density ratio to be able to be still going up one more because they were entitled, if this were gone through, to subdivide again and have another home, so they'd have 3 homes on these blocks, 2 blocks, block 1 and block 2. But the 173 denies them that from going forward. So we can try to do our best to eliminate conflict of use and conflicts around that area. The community in supporting this, and this document, the Rural Land Strategy, verse after verse goes back to the community, what they wanted to put forward. And I'm afraid when the decision's made, it goes to the land, it doesn't go to the person. And the thing that troubled me with when it first came out was, what happens if that gets sold? That's the point that we've got in the long term. And we've got to make sure there's no precedent if a person wants to do this again. However, still in this document and in the policies, if there is going to be an excision under point 22.1, it clearly states that the excision must be the minimised parcel of land, and I think this applicant has tried to do that, to minimise it down to 0.6 of a hectare, allowing the rest of the land to be still used in agricultural use. The other things, Mr Mayor, I think is something that has to be addressed is, in the report it says where the CFA have no comment, but later in the document it says the CFA did not support it because the proposed recommendation was not for the applicant to succeed. If it says it had no comment, how did they come to say that they weren't going to support it? The other thing with the bushfire overlay, if the CFA want to be a referral authority, and this is another issue that I've brought up time and time again at this table, the referral authorities seem to want to have the authority referred to them and then either drag their feet or make no comment. If they want to bushfire overlay something, they should make sure that some comment in relationship to why they wanted the bushfire over this area and make some comment. Just to say no comment gives me the direction they shouldn't have the bushfire layer over it in the first place. The other, it has been mentioned before, and I won't go over that, but there's the versatility of agriculture is mentioned here, and it's mentioned in this document as well. And this area of land is in that area. And it says very plainly small lots, but it doesn't explain whether the lots there now are small or whether it's going into the future we're going to have small lots. But I think what we're trying to do is put a little bit of a human element into this in relation. I've gone through a succession plan, it's not a very pleasant experience. And to accommodate it, and we've got governments giving complex directions by wanting to trying to get people to do succession planning, then they're trying to tell you to stay in your home longer. So we've got to accommodate in relationship to in the planning area. I think this is not, in a specific area there is a lot of other homes that are in smaller areas. And I'll just finish off by saying reiterate that if anyone thinks this is going to be a precedent, it's not going to be a precedent, because the very fact that we are going to deny the subdivision of any further in that area.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Clark, would you like to comment?
Mr. Chairman, I have a bit of a problem that we had a recommendation from the planning department, which we haven't touched on, and I find it very difficult to go against the recommendations of the planning department, but there's been no discussion about that. We've just discussed another motion.
Yes, that's true, but that motion was put forward. We can discuss that other motion if this motion gets declined. So I'm more than happy to discuss this motion. If this motion doesn't get up, we will revert back to the previous motion, and then that will be discussed. Councillor Curry.
I might have to revert for a question here along the way, but the question, I look at this and I actually feel for the proposed applicant around this, but at the end of the day I look at it and I do look at the precedent that this will cause, because effectively, yes, there might be a 173 on this property, but it sends a precedent right across the community of what we will and what we won't do. And effectively, what we are saying is that we're going to go against the rules. Now, correct me if I am wrong, but this is about a subdivision. It's not about building. And if there was around the land and the density of housing and so forth, they can still potentially build a house on the land, as it says, without the subdivision. It's correct. So first of all, we're talking about, I'll just have a look at my notes here. Succession planning. So to succession plan, we don't actually need to subdivide. There still can be a property built on the house without the precedence. And the problem that I have with it is that Diffie's out of Tarawinji. If I looked at the history, I know you've got a long history, so do the Diffie's out there. But after generation to generation, the properties were sold off. And the farm got smaller and smaller and smaller, and I think they've still got about 1,000 acres out there. That says to me that this can happen to anybody at any particular time, and if we're setting up a precedence of putting another block on this particular land that doesn't need to be subdivided, this can be then sold off as an individual property, and that's where the problems actually occur. So the rules and so forth that are all around there, they do make a lot of sense in this particular instance. This isn't about, this is all around subdividing the land. It's not about housing, it's not about anything else. And the rules that the council have applied to this, they make a lot of sense. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll just finish off my section and I'll cast back to Councillor Bustle as the mover to see if he would like to finish. But I do appreciate the hard work and the effort that our planners do in deciding arduous applications that, and hence this is here before council because of it. But I'd just like to point out that, and I'm a little bit angry with Donald, he's taken a few of my lines away there, so I'll just repeat a couple of them. Succession planning is not in the planning scheme. But guess what? It probably should be, or should be looked at somehow. State and local planning schemes does not support this. A decision made out of Spring Street does not support our local people and the building of our communities. Clause 1101-15 to promote sustainable growth was done in 2014. It's now 2019, soon to be 2020. We constantly make precinct plans. Sorry, Jamie. Currently, we constantly make precinct plans that say that these documents are living and breathing and open to change at any time. And as our needs and wants change, so do our country areas. They change constantly, and we need to adapt and change with them. State policy and local planning policy, it's black or it's white. It's a hell of a lot of grey. The CFA, as Harvey said, had no objections or conditions that they applied. There will be always conflict in life, and this development will again start a future conflict. Clause 14, the subject land is currently farmed and may reduce its gravity for agricultural production. May, very dangerous word. It may not. It may. Sorry, I'm going over may. Like the word hope. May. The protection of our land. How is this farm of 6,600 square metres going to be farmed? Well, it's 6,600 square metres. It's currently not farmed. The other land out the back, and we've got that protection clause in the 173 agreement that was read out by Councillor Bussell. This leftover land, or any land, could be sold to someone like me, a townie, who'll do nothing with it. So its productivity is lost. We're more focused on imaginings in planning and offer interpretation in clauses of policy that can differ from person to person. High productive land depends greatly on who farms it, how much income they want or they need. We need to be more versatile and lead what is good for our area, not from out of Spring Street. We're not here to lead what happens in Indigo or Alpine or Latrobe. Doesn't worry me, I'm just interested in our area and the people that is in our area. And this is what the people are telling us. If it was up to me, and it's not up to me personally, I'd get rid of the 173 agreement. I don't like it. I'd let them subdivide further. Still got over 200 acres left, they can subdivide into two. I understand what Harvey's saying about the amount of houses. It doesn't increase the amount of houses in that area, and I appreciate that. But maybe we need a few more. There's a lot of mongrel blocks around you can't do anything with. But productivity of building a community is a great farming asset. So in closing, expanding your vision means seeing the full spectrum beyond the present in the anticipation of greater prospects. So thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, the motion put forward, and I'll just get Councillor Bussell once again to please read that motion put forward, and we will vote.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The Council issue or grant a planning permit with respect to planning permit application PIN-out 19/008 for a two-lot subdivision,
Microphone.
268 Carville Road, Alley, subject to conditions listed below and in accordance with endorsed plans.
And there's 21 conditions, Councillor Bussell, so just confirming those 21 conditions. A lot of them are standard conditions for a subdivision.
So, Stephen has said to me the standard conditions with the exception of the Section 173 agreement, which I'll read out again. Prior to the issue of the statement of compliance, the owner of lots must enter into an agreement with the responsible authority made pursuant to Section 173 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, and make application to the Registrar of Titles to have the agreement registered on the title to the land under Section 181 of the Act, which provides that. So as I said before, this is the important bit. The land described as Lot 2 on the endorsed plans will not be further subdivided so as to create additional lots. The owner or owners must pay all costs, including council costs, associated with the preparation, execution, registration and if later sought cancellation of the Section 173 agreement. So that's that part. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Bussell. So I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour, please raise their hands. The motion is carried. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That all those against the motion, please raise their hands. Thank you. I'll continue on with item number 19.1. That's the Record of Assembly of Council Advisory Committee. Thank you, Brendan McGrath.
Just bear with me while I scroll down to the page. My apologies. So 19.1 deals with a range of assemblies of councillors and advisory committee meetings that happened through September and October. The recommendation is that Council receives those reports of assembly and notes the minutes of those advisory committees.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the gallery in relation to this? No? I'll put the motion forward. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Bussell. Councillor Clark. As a seconder, all those in favour? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no notices of motion or urgent business, but there is public question time. So, as I stated earlier on, public question time, 2 questions per person if you have one, and I'd like to welcome up Jenny to come and read her first question. Thank you, Jenny. Again, Jenny, could you just state your full name and...
Sure. Jenny Ashby. I'm the convener of the Wetlands Community Planning Group. I'd like to thank the Council for providing this opportunity to speak with all of you on a significant community issue, which is the sealing of the 7 kilometres of the Benalla-Whitfield Road through Myrrhee. This is the last remaining link road to be sealed in the local government area of Wangaratta. So on the 9th of September, I submitted from the Wetlands Community Planning Group and the Wetlands Progress Association Incorporated a question for the rural city of Wangaratta for this council meeting. So the question is, when will the Wangaratta Council complete the sealing of the Benalla-Whitfield Road, given this is the last unsealed link road in the municipality? Thank you.
Thank you,
we've also got some other questions from the floor.
Please. Thank you, Jenny. I'll just answer part of the question and also look towards Alan Clark, our Director, in relation to this to further expand. So at the May 2019 Council meeting, Council endorsed the recommended method for prioritising unsealed roads for a rural road sealing program to inform future budget decisions. The Benalla-Whitfield Road is covered by 7 segments of road, with 4 segments being in the top 5 to seal and the remainder in the top 25, so the remaining 2. Officers are completing the detailed design this financial year. The current work estimates are well over $6 million. Given the cost, it is unlikely that Council would fund these works directly and will start looking for external funding once the designs are complete for a future year's program. Thank you, Alan. Further comments?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this road's been our priority 1 road for as long as I've been here, which is about 6 years. But I think it goes back to, I think it was probably a good 12 or so years ago when Council was sealing a kilometre a year. But no roads have been sealed for a considerable time. In that period, other than last year when Council sealed a section of road ourselves. When I say no roads, no 100-kilometre-hour rural roads. We've had a rural township sealing program for a while. So we've done the work, and this road does sit number 1. We're doing the detailed design this year. The beauty of that, it gives us the much stronger ability to apply for grants, and it's unlikely the road will be sealed without getting considerable support from the state or federal governments. Unfortunately, a lot of the way the grant funding is scored and assessed at the state and federal level, they put all criteria around it, and the road doesn't necessarily stack up compared with some higher populated areas. So I really believe the best way we can get the road sealed is to really advocate really hard with our state and federal members and try and get an electoral promise made come election time, because it is an expensive road to seal. It sits higher than most grants that are out there. As I said, there's not too many grants that this road sits neatly in. So I'd encourage everyone, the Lands Group and everyone else, to just take every chance to advocate for the project so it becomes a norm, so it becomes accepted that the road's going to get sealed with some help from the state or federal government. So please keep talking about it. We'll keep doing the same, and hopefully we can bring it together.
Thank you, Alan. Further questions from the gallery? Please come forward.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I wanted to ask...
Sorry, could you just state the name?
Yeah, so my name's Pippa Kay, and I live up in Woodlands as well. So I just wanted to ask, how will the Wangaratta Council source the $7 million approximately required to seal the Vanilla Whitfield Road?
Well, I think we probably answered that in the last statement. You know, we'll clearly need considerable support from the state or federal governments. We'd be looking for at least one-to-one support, but hopefully better. And if we get those sort of electoral promises, and they do happen. When I worked at Indigo Council, a local member rang me one Sunday afternoon at home and said, you got any roads we can do that we can make an electoral promise? And I was able to talk about 3 roads off the top of my head. Those 3 roads got sealed as an electoral promise. So I see that as the most likely way that we're going to get this sort of money.
Thank you.
Jenny Ashby from Whitlands. Just wanting to ask the council, how can we help as a community help Wangaratta Council to apply for Victorian state government roads funding? So I did do some research today, and there is the Fixing Country Roads program. It's currently the 2nd year of that funded program. It's a 2-year funded program. Councils, rural and regional councils, of which there are 48 in Victoria, need to put a proposal up to the government for that, and we would be happy to support it. The second round, the proposals would have to be in by before June 2020, but I believe with the second round, you can apply for up to 1.5 million. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. I'd just like to point out, Brendan and myself are constantly in Melbourne talking to ministers on certain things, and we'll try to talk to and catch up with Jala Pulford, who is the Minister for Roads, and see what we can do in relation to tourism. It is a major tourism link as well. So we will try and arrange appointments over the next month with her office. I'll just throw a question over to Sarah. Sarah, with the CILS, which is the Community Infrastructure Loans Scheme that has now been announced through the Treasurer, does that apply to roads as well or not? Not to roads? No. Okay, thank you. So what we'll do is we'll try and catch up with Jala. She has been up here on occasions, but we're constantly in Melbourne meeting on certain ministerial things. We have a secretariat that will arrange to get these appointments done and see what we can do to try and advocate straight away for this road and see what kind of funding there is available, even on a dollar for dollar aspect there. Are there any further questions, please?
Yeah, David Bird from Whitlands. What are the council's reasons for not sealing any rural roads with 100 km/h limits in the last 10 years?
Thanks, Dave. Alan?
I probably can't in full, but we've had these priorities. Council, so this council, the previous council, and the one before that certainly, and it must have been at least one before that, haven't sealed any roads, and it just gets down to budget priorities. I can't explain the logic that goes back for what would be 4 or 5 different groups of councils. councillors. What we did do, as I said last year, we trialled using our own indoor, so our field service crew to seal a road. We did choose a fairly straightforward road. It's more straightforward than this road, but we did show that our own in-house crew can seal roads quite successfully. So, and we're building that skill all the time, and that does save us money in the long run. So we might be able to do that, but it's still going to cost considerable money. But I can't tell you why multiple councils haven't sealed roads.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, sir, I'll just get this gentleman first and then we'll...
Yeah, it's Bruce Johnson. I'm from Chestnut.
Bruce.
Yes. Earlier you mentioned, Councillor Rees, that there was some importance to it from of that road being in better shape than it is from the point of view of tourism, because obviously it's a lead in through to the King Valley as well. The other thing I think that was mentioned earlier in tonight's meeting from Councillor Curry there was the further development of considering the rural city of Wangaratta rather than just call it the city limits of Wangaratta. There is a high importance to see not just this road, but which is a council road and such, but the whole of the King Valley further developed and through tourism, through better industry, with the ability for log trucks, etc., buses, school buses, children to be able to drive on these roads more safely than what they are currently able to do in terms of the fact that they are quite narrow in many cases, both this road as well as the King Valley Road. And I'm just trying to see where the council is sitting with further development of the Shire to bring in more people. As I think earlier we were saying, many people have been leaving districts of the Shire. What can the council do even to make it into, instead of the full 7Ks, why not do it like was being done by the Oxley Shire and do it in, say, 1K implements per year and things of this nature, with a plan in the long term to see that the whole of the road is sealed, be it get a grant for the $1 million this year and seal for what that can cover, and move with the master plan that you're working on now to know that it's going to be fully sealed. Can something be done along those sort of lines?
Yeah, sure they can. You can certainly advocate with councillors, and we're certainly aware, and Councillor Bussell has spoken about on more occasions, that we know the tourism trade up in this area is vital, and it has increased, as you probably would be aware, by over 100% in the last 12 months. So it's an important one, and maybe that could increase it further again to get that access through from Benalla and around. So it is a thing that it's coming up towards budgeting time for next year, and Sarah, maybe that's the thing we need to put on to see if we could do to see where funds and how councillors will vote further on this when it comes to the budget for 2020. So thank you. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you.
I'm Jeff Lacey. I'm on the committee for this wonderful hall that you're all sitting in today, and I only have one little frustration. Over the last couple of years, we've been running a number of functions, and what happens when we get a shower of rain is that our parking is sadly lacking. And I have spoken a number of times to the council, and I've had a couple that have almost got here, but we haven't had any luck with getting some gravel and parking facilities. So for this hall to continue on in a safe and operation, we need to have something done.
Thanks, Jeff. Again, a budgetary item. Sarah's got it down there. We'll discuss it further in our next budgetary session coming up soon. Councillor Curran.
This actually comes back to something you sent before, but the rural city of Wangaratta is just not Wangaratta. When the councillors first come together, they put together a plan to spend money in the rural communities, and this particular one thing should actually be part of that money that we've set aside for exactly that. It's for things that wouldn't normally get up around a budgetary time, but this is money that we've set aside. We've set around $450,000 a year to go to things that help the community, and things like this is just a perfect example of what we want to put that money to.
It's our placemaking projects. So thank you, Councillor Curry. Thanks for bringing that up, and aware that's a great one. So we'll make sure we can, and we'll vote. Councillors will then vote on it, and I'll vote on it for yes. So if it doesn't get up, it's not me. Any further questions from the gallery? Yes, please. Both of you guys come up.
My name is Gunter Nichols and I live in Whitlands, and I just want to thank the council, and particularly Councillor Bussell, for the speedy response that we had when I asked to have the road graded, and that was done very promptly. So just as a word of encouragement, thank you very much.
Thank you, Gunter. Thanks, Councillor Bussell. Well done.
John Bridges from the More You Action Group. I suppose as you were driving up here tonight, you probably noticed the appalling conditions of the drains on the Boggy Creek Road. Does Council have any plan to clear the drains, the rural drains in the rural city of Wangaratta?
Thanks, John. Good question. Alan.
Thank you. Thanks, John. I gave John the answer before, but for the benefit of everyone else. Certainly for many years, and possibly ever, council hadn't had any dedicated money for table drains or rural drainage, i.e. the culverts. We now do. We have had the rural table drain money for a couple of years now, and the drainage is a new thing this financial year. So we now have money that's actually dedicated to doing this, and I think it's been long neglected, and I think it goes back, around 20 years when there's some changes, and I think the table drains have been neglected since then, and there's many examples where you can see trees which are about 20 years old growing in our table drains, and of course we now have trouble removing those because of all the various legislation about preserving trees. So there's that money, and there's the reshedding gravel roads funds. So if we go back 5 years, all those things totaled $400,000 in the budget, and now those three things combined is about $2.2 million. So we've come a long way in the last 5 years, but there's a fair bit of catch up to do too. So not every road is going to happen overnight, but we now have those dedicated funds, and it is happening.
Thanks, John. Have you got another question?
Please do question two, yes.
Please do.
Bearing in mind the success of this meeting here tonight, will Council consider increasing the number of meetings in the villages or in the rural city of Wangaratta?
Yeah, it's a good question. We do get great patronage from our outer areas of the rural city of Wangaratta, so it is great to see, and I think it's a thing that we could look at and consider and have a talk about it, and see which way councillors want to go. It's up to the councillors to vote on this, and try and get us out to a couple more. We get out to approximately 4 a year. Maybe we should get out to 5 or 6. Councillor Clark.
I can just make a comment there. We've tried to split them, but to come out to the country centres in the middle of winter, and then all of us have to go back into Wangaratta, we find that we... The point I'm trying to make is that we have, this month we're here, next month we're at El Dorado, I think.
Yeah, I think
we're
so.
certainly out of town next month. And we do appreciate the fact that people do come to our Wangaratta meetings. Some meetings in Wangaratta we might have 3 or 4 there. So it's a really good sign that we need to be in the country.
Thank you, Councillor. Good. Over it. Councillor Curry.
I'm worried about saying anything. All I'm going to say is I'm going to take this opportunity to turn around and say we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. because it was quite recently that something came up about the marketing strategy, and we had it at a rural function and we couldn't fit everybody in. And we were accused of setting that up deliberately so we couldn't get people in there, and there was comments in the paper that people had to sit in the ground and things like that. So while we would all like to spread our visits to wherever, and we're quite happy to because we like talking to people, we're also damned if we do and we're damned if we don't with the rural city of Wangaratta.
Thank you, Councillor Curran. Any further questions from the gallery? Yes, please.
So I'm Christine Delaney, and I've been a ratepayer and a resident of Whitlands for 49 years. I've travelled nearly every day of those 49 years to Wangaratta. I've certainly watched the growth of the wonderful care given to the Myrrhee crossroad over the years, lots of repair there. But outside Myrrhee I haven't noticed very much. So I've been heavily involved in trying to move this along, get our roads serviceable for the future. My question is about, I've heard that the budget is going to be allocated to work on getting our road sealed, but I think we need to drill down a bit more and see in some form of documentation that there actually is enough staff within the department that's managing this to be ready to deal with any grants that we might work on getting for you, and that you might also attract when we get our MPs on side, which we'll all be working on now. There'll be money, I'm sure, as elections come due, that's when money comes. So I'd like to propose that the financial commitment from the council, that you're prepared to make sure that your EFT for your department dealing with roads is effective, and that they can then lead a pathway for improvement. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Alan, would you like to comment there?
Just a couple of comments. I did say that we'd sealed a road with our internal crew recently, but this road wouldn't necessarily be done by the internal crew. It could be contractors, or it could be us. By getting the detailed design done, that's always the big stumbling block. So if we have that done, that opens the door, and we'd be able to go to tender for a private contractor very, very simply. There is one other thing that we have to sort out in between construction and design, and that is there'll probably be some land acquisition swap required along the way, and once we have that detailed design done, we'll know exactly what that is. We know the road's not where it's meant to be in places, so we'll have to work with some of the landholders to formalise those things first. So we'll do that as soon as we can. We have the capability with our internal crew who manage the contracts and project manage these things. We can do that. We're right to do that right now, and we have the flexibility to increase and decrease according to the type of projects we've got. So we're right in that space. And as I said before, we're building the skill level of our internal crews. We lost that ability to do things like construct roads, and we're regaining that, and that's coming along really nicely. So we probably don't need to make any changes to the staff right at this point.
Alan, just a leading on question with that, if you could answer, please. If we didn't do the detailed design, what's the likelihood of ever applying and getting a grant?
Look, it's highly unlikely, because most grant processes, they want shovel-ready projects, because if a politician puts up money, they want to see the results as soon as possible. So by having it done, we tick that box, and it's a really big box to tick. So otherwise, the chances are very, very slim.
Thank you. Further question? Yes.
You mentioned a detailed plan. Apparently, and I might be wrong here, but apparently the Oxley Shire had already set up a fund for every year in their budget to seal about 1 kilometre of the road. That's why the first kilometres roughly been done. Wouldn't they have had a detailed plan in those days?
So one of the ex-staff members, Neil Ottaway, who's on one of the committees with me, he passed word along that he'd worked on the survey for the road many, many years ago. He wasn't sure how advanced the plans went for the full length, but he certainly worked on the survey of it. So there was something, but we don't have that something anymore.
Any further questions? Yes, please.
I'm Sue McAlpine. There are buses that come down that dirt road. 2 go up in the morning, 2 come down at night. I think it's a really big safety issue. We've got our kids on them. We're not worried about tourism. We want that road done.
Thanks, Sue.
Well, they're big buses. And that's a small road.
Thank you, Sue. Any further questions? Brian?
Brian Fox, and I thank you again, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Fox.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to congratulate the council on the seats that have arrived, a few seats that have arrived at bus stops around Wangaratta. Now, I'm not sure where those seats come from. They're certainly not new, but they're in very good condition. I've already been out in Swan Street and painted mine. I would, and in view of that, sir, I would like the council to try and encourage a resident to adopt a bus stop. It's not something that the council can drive around and clean or whatever, but I am sure that there's enough residents in this town who live within 100 metres of a bus stop who would be happy to have their name on Joe Blow, and this bus stop is mine.
A bit like that Adopt a Highway program they had years ago.
Right.
People cleaned up.
Thank you.
Okay.
My second item, sir, is that I would like council to delay any decommissioning of works at Swan Street Pool until after the next council election, which is scheduled for late October. This is so the community can have a say at the ballot box. Sir, I was delighted to hear you saying when we were talking about a subdivision that communities change and the geography, the demographics, it changes. Well, the decision to decommission the Swan Street Pool was done more than 6 years ago. First, we had an elected council that got sacked, but that's another story. That they mooted that that's what they wanted to do. The next thing is the administrators came along and they confirmed the previous council's idea. And now, when I talk to some councillors, decision makers here, they tell me, well, it's out of our hands, it's the administrators made it. Well, in my essays, I've written that they're like the three amigos. They've ridden off into the sunset. They have no influence whatsoever in the rural city of Wangaratta. And if you, as councillors, believe that the residents of today should have a say, leave it to the next council after the next election. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Councillor Bustle.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Question, did you know what was in this hall on Saturday the 26th of October at 7:30 p.m?
Yes, I do. It's here on the brochures at the back. Is this a marketing plan, Councillor Bustle?
It is absolutely a marketing plan.
Yes, I'm going to see this gentleman the night before.
So everybody in the room, have a look at this brochure. Support this here in this great hall. It's there.
Thank you, ladies. Are there any further questions, please? Yes. Sir, there's still some more. Just one moment. Right, got more. Oh, just ladies. Sue. I thought Sue was getting up for a question.
No.
Thank you.
Rachel Croucher. I'm a 46-year resident of Whitlands, so I've travelled these roads as a school kid. I've travelled them for work. My children now travel them as going to school. My question is, does the council see the sealing of the Benalla-Whitfield Road as an urgent priority, or is it just a priority? Is there a way that it can be made urgent so that then funding can be gained to make this road happen? Because I've personally had an accident on this road. So is that a thing?
Well, from what Director Clark said, it is in our top priority road to be done, so that's the most urgent it can be. The design work is being done, so we wouldn't do design work if we weren't interested in sealing it. So it is fairly well up there, and when that design work's done, then we can go out and start hammering polys and trying to do that.
Yeah, trying to get funding.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Sorry, Alan, the design work that we've already committed to, what's the costing of that design work that we've already committed to?
140,000, I think.
Yep. So to get that design work done, that's right. So it is a great priority. We wouldn't spend 140 if it wasn't on the short list. Thank you. Next question, sir. 150.
I'm also from Midlands. Good town. I'd like us to support the statements that that road does need improvement, partly for tourism, but also for safety, because there are many sections in that road where you are coming around blind corners, and every time they come down it's sort of a bit hard in the mouth, because you never know when you're going to meet someone coming the other way in the middle of a narrow road. I'm afraid that it will probably become really urgent when we have a major bus crash. Just hope we don't. Also for tourism, there are many tourists who will not attempt to go on a dirt road, and if they do go on that road, and if we do get them coming up there, they'll have the same sort of experience that I had coming here tonight, following another car. I had to hang back about 100 metres so that I could see through the dust, see where the road was, and to make sure there isn't another car coming the opposite direction. So it certainly needs to be right up the top, and to actually not just stay at the top, get done.
Thank you.
That's the other question, and I think we may have a second thing.
Community matters.
The community matters. While preparing to approach the council about the road, I had said to Jenny that looking through here, this issue was very big on capital expenditure. And, I think it was, I've lost my glasses, but I think it was 33 million.
Correct.
33 million. And this talks about nearly all of that going to the Wangaratta township. Very little, if any, very little of it ending up in the rural areas of this rural city. The only thing I could see specifically listed, you've got $500,000 under rural placemaking program. Jenny inquired and was told there have been other projects.
And I'll get out shortly to explain a couple of things there.
I believe something like $1 million.
So we received a letter along similar lines to this, which was passed on to me by the CEO this afternoon. I had about 20 minutes before I came out here, and just going through our capital budget alone so far, I quickly got to $7.5 million of projects in the rural areas, and there's more in the operating budget.
That's good to hear. It wasn't mentioned.
So,
could you hope that there's if that amounts to a fair share for the rural part? But $7 million for them, because that means, what's that, 26 million for this town?
There's a couple of unique projects which are being done in town at the moment, and the pool being the biggest one, of course, and we had the Cruise Street job this last year. So that is a bit unusual. When we normally look at the capital budget, and it's normally a lot less than the 33, we quickly get to a very large percentage done in the rural areas, because a lot of it's done on the roads, and over 90% of the roads are in the rural areas, of course, but people miss that part. Just resealing the roads, we generally spend over $1 million. Resheeting the roads is about 1.7 at the moment, plus those things I spoke about before, the table drains and the culverts, etc. So that's repeat money that's spent in the rural areas every year. Some of the projects that you've got listed there are one-offs, and it just depends where that one-off is happening. But we've got, for example, we've got the design for Whitfield in this year's budget. Previously we've done Miller and Springhurst. We're doing Glenrowan as well in this year. So these are the plans which allow us to do the infrastructure work. So there's actually a lot there. It just doesn't necessarily jump out at people.
Does resheeting count as capital or maintenance?
It does. Resheeting counts as capital. What we call maintenance grading doesn't, but resheeting counts as capital, yes.
So as long as the rural part would like to get their fair share, but also it would be worth mentioning that.
It will be to show competitiveness there.
Yes.
Yep.
Show them to show this we're getting our fair share.
Yep.
Because it didn't say.
It's a great point. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, any further more questions? Oh, yes. Please.
I'm Myrrhee Johnson of Chestnut. How will the council communicate its progress for the funding and the sealing of the road to the community?
To the community, it's a good point. We've got a couple of avenues. Councillor Bustle meets with the action group from Myrrhee, but we probably should get a further action group, or not further action group going, but other groups that we could come and talk to at certain times. We do meet with Regional Roads Victoria as well, which we have done on the main road coming out there to try and improve the shoulders, etc., on more narrow areas and make that safety for our buses, etc. Anything further you feel on that one, Alan?
One of our managers, Marcus Goonan, I think has attended two of your committee's meetings. Correct me if I'm wrong, committee members. One, but I think he's spoken a few times, and we're happy to keep that going. You know, give you updates via your meetings, or we're happy to update verbally at any time through emails or phone as well. But happy for someone to come out to your meetings. Perhaps not every meeting. I'm not sure how often you meet, but say perhaps
once a month.
Yeah, we won't be coming out every month. But,
no, we were very appreciative that Marcus came out in March. What about in community matters?
Yeah, that's a good idea. So we could report on that every quarter. So yeah. All right. Thank you very much. If there's no further questions, we'll call the meeting to a close. Again, thank you everybody for coming out. Please stay around, have a cup of coffee, and sit with us. We'd appreciate that. And thank you again, and have a good and safe trip back. Thank you.